Today, we're diving into a really provocative idea called the architecture of lack. It's a concept that, believe it or not, tries to connect the fall of empires, our own psychology, and maybe even the future of AI. And it all starts by looking at a very controversial old theory in a completely new light. So it all kicks off with this wild question. Back in the 1930s, an anthropologist came out and said he'd found a direct, almost mathematical link between a society's rules about sex and whether it would rise to greatness or just completely collapse. Sounds pretty crazy, I know. But stick with me because the real story here is way more interesting than it first seems. The book was called Sex and Culture, and it was written by a guy named J.D. Unwin. When it came out, people just didn't know what to make of it. It was seen as, well, strange and honestly a little uncomfortable. See, Unwin had studied 86 different societies throughout history and claimed he found this undeniable pattern. But his conclusions, they made a lot of people very uneasy. And so, for decades, Unwin's work was pretty much written off. Most critics just labeled it a product of its time. You know, a kind of old-fashioned moralistic argument dressed up as science. And to be fair, you can see why. On the surface, it really looked like he was just saying that sexual restraint was the secret ingredient for a successful civilization. But here's where our whole exploration takes a massive turn. What if everyone has been reading Unwin all wrong? What if his intense focus on sex was just a detail, a product of the societies he was studying? What if the real mechanism he stumbled upon was something much, much deeper, something that has huge implications for us right now? To get there, we need to introduce this key idea, social energy. Just think of it as the extra juice a civilization has. It's that surplus creative and productive force that gets used to build incredible temples, write complex laws, and create timeless art. This is the new way to read Unwin. His real subject wasn't morality. It was about how you generate this incredibly powerful social energy. So, here's the crucial point. Unwin's big argument was that for a society to build up this surplus social energy, it needs some kind of powerful internal limit, a constraint. See, when you can't immediately get something you really want, that desire doesn't just go away. It has to go somewhere else. It gets redirected. It gets transformed into something new. And this really lays out the two paths a society can take. On one side, you've got desire plus constraint. When those two meet, that pent-up energy gets channeled outwards. It fuels big, long-term projects, art, science, exploration. But on the other side, when desire gets instant access to whatever it wants, well, that energy just dissipates. Poof, it's used up in the moment, and the society's creative engine starts to slow down. Later on, psychoanalytic theory actually came up with a name for this exact idea. They called it lack. It's this foundational concept that what really drives us isn't what we have, it's what we don't have. This lack is like the empty space that we're constantly trying to fill, and in doing so, we build our entire world. This really gets to the core paradox of what it means to want something. We tend to think desire is all about satisfaction, about getting the thing. But this flips that whole idea on its head. Desire is born from absence. The engine of culture, of creativity, it only starts when something is missing. Without that lack, there's literally no fuel. Which, of course, brings us right back to our original question. If the real secret sauce is this abstract idea of lack, then why did Unwin spend 700 pages talking almost exclusively about sex? Well, the answer really just comes down to history. You see, over time, the main place where society puts this crucial constraint, it changes. In the pre-modern world that Unwin was studying, the number one thing that was heavily constrained was sexual opportunity. But in our world, that's shifted. The main constraint became something we can call symbolic delay. Basically, the time we have to wait, to process, to want something. And the problem is, that delay is now vanishing. And this is the diagnosis for our modern age. The thing that's truly in short supply today isn't sexual restriction. It's delay. It's waiting. It's that friction that forces us to think, to imagine, to create. We live in an era of instant gratification for almost everything. Information, entertainment, communication, you name it. And the results of living in this world without delay, this culture of saturation, well, they might sound pretty familiar. Our attention spans are getting shorter. There's this feeling of cultural burnout where everything feels like a remake or a reboot of something that's already been done. There's this weird sense that even though everything is available to us, nothing really sticks. Nothing really binds us together. This is what the dissipation of social energy looks like in real time. So, what we can do is update Unwin's conclusion. He saw this pattern and thought, okay, civilizational decline must be a moral failure. But a more modern structural way of looking at it suggests something else. Decline doesn't follow a moral failing, it follows the rise of what you could call a fantasy of completeness. This deep-seated belief that a perfect world is one where nothing is missing, nothing is delayed, and nothing is ever out of reach. So that brings us right to the cutting edge. Where do we see this fantasy of completeness, this dream of total access and perfect prediction being chased after with the most energy and resources today? Well, the answer lies in our most advanced and ambitious technology. And here, the parallel becomes just crystal clear. The way we often approach AI is built on this very same fantasy of completeness. The idea is that if you just have enough data and remove all the limits, you'll get perfect intelligence. But this theory of lack suggests the opposite. It suggests that true intelligence, just like a vibrant culture, actually emerges from incompleteness. It needs structured limits, a necessary gap, to generate any real meaning. The alternative isn't perfection, it's entropy, just a flat, meaningless state of equilibrium. This is the universal law that Unwin was unknowingly circling all those years ago. It's not a moral law, it's a structural one. Any system, whether it's a human society or an artificial intelligence, needs some kind of foundational lack, some core incompleteness to be able to generate meaning, creativity, and coherence. Without it, it can't create anything truly new. And this is the great warning that this whole idea leaves us with. The endless pursuit of total availability, of a world with no friction, no resistance, no waiting, it doesn't lead to utopia. When any system, a culture, a mind, or an AI, finally succeeds in getting rid of all its internal limits, it doesn't achieve perfection. It just collapses into a state of static, meaningless balance. It reaches entropy. So we're left with a final and I think crucial question. If this lack really is the engine of all creativity and meaning, then our goal probably shouldn't be to just tear down every barrier and remove every single constraint we can find. Instead, the great challenge for our time, and our culture and our technology, and how we design our future is to figure out which limits are actually the essential ones. Which architectures of lack do we need to build, not tear down?